Okay, hi.
Fees will be drastically lower, and we should see a lot of, or some movement from the L1 to L2s where things are cheaper and sort of moving towards this goal of L1 being more of a settlement layer than where we're doing most of the transacting.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the fee part because that really seems like the goal, like one of the main results that we want from EIP 4844, from the Dencun upgrade. I have yet to see really any concrete estimations for how much cheaper exactly we're really going to get. It seems like it's the real answer is we don't know. It'll get cheaper, but maybe between a very large interval of like 10x to 100x. And there might be, we're pretty confident there's going to be secondary markets for blobs, but there hasn't been a ton of analysis on exactly who these markets are going to be run by. There seems to be a lot of open-ended questions of what's really going to happen to L2s and the blob fee market that I haven't really seen developers really care about or explain. Terence, can you explain why that is? Why do we not know how fees are going to be impacted by L2s if this is the point of the upgrade?
Yeah, that's a great question. So,
Also, I like your shoes.
thank you.
They're very nice.
This was actually for your podcast. Just it's supposed to be jungle themed, but yeah. Anyway,
love that.
shout out to your podcast.
Jungle theme.
But so the textbook answer to that question is no one knows, right? But I can give you my more like a math estimation that if today you take the Arbitrum data, you switch from cold data to blob data, it's about 4 times cheaper, right? So you can say at the baseline, everything will be 4 times cheaper. But then again, that's the first order effect. Then there's this second order effect. If today it's 4 times cheaper, then more people will use it. Then it becomes the same cost as before or even more expensive. It's almost like the thermos, right? You put it in your room, you set the temperature to 75 degrees, and then you can go up and down, but eventually it will reach that equilibrium. And today the equilibrium is these 3 blobs per slot. Just if today we have 3 blobs per slot, if it's at 3 blobs or lower than 3 blobs, the price is basically free. So anyone can post anything. It's basically free, right? If today I see the price is free, it's 0. I mean, as like a hacker or someone that's bored, I can just post random data on there. I don't care, right? So you can think of that from that angle. Someone will always do something. So it will always be 3 blobs, right? So now the question is, okay, what happens? What's the second order effect? And today, all the layer 2 combined use about 1 gigabyte of data per day. And that's about 1/4 of the whole EIP 4844 blob space. So we have another half to reach before the price increase. And I have no doubt that we can easily reach that.
Okay, as sparse as they are, I mean, that is a little bit more clarity, so I appreciate that. But assuming that L2 fees really do come down significantly and become as competitive as, say, competitive alt layer ones like Solana, I don't know, like Avalanche, et cetera, et cetera. My question is, are L2s really the place where we want to push Ethereum users to go to now, given that the level of decentralization, say security, say scalability of L2s, is really not that different from what you could experience on, say, Solana or these other alt L1s that I mentioned? And really, like, the competitive advantage of Ethereum's network effect is that you're able to utilize and leverage the full, like, composable DApp ecosystem of Ethereum. Like, are we really sure that we want to start pushing users to the L2 now with an upgrade like Dencun? Are L2s ready for end users, and are you worried at all that as users move to L2s, they notice that the user experience for this level of decentralization and security could perhaps better be utilized on a platform like Solana?
I'll start with that. I would say that an L2 is only as secure as its weakest link, right? And if you think about a complete L2 benefits entirely from the security of Ethereum. So even if it completely fell apart, you still can exit and complete, whatever you were trying to do back onto L1. So the security is still there, although like that's kind of still like a worst case scenario. So I mean, if it's a true L2, I wouldn't say that you have a less secure environment. I would say maybe you have a liveness risk or maybe a reliability depending on the L2, right? They could go down, but Ethereum doesn't go down. But as far as like security-wise, like if it's a true L2, it should be inherently just as secure as L1 security.
So L2s in their current state, you would say, is competitive against other alternative L1s?
Well, the caveat is it has to be a complete L2, right? You have to have like some mechanism to prove any fraudulent behavior of a sequencer. So you have to have fraud proofs. You have to have all these mechanisms. And I wouldn't say that all L2s have this. I wouldn't even say that any L2 is complete yet, but they are in different phases of reaching that level of security.
Anything to add there,
So
Terence?
I will maybe like a little bit more controversial point is that if today we don't have this like scalable data on Ethereum, meaning that if we provide scalable data, then more users might move to layer 2 because it's cheaper. If we don't do that, then there's other DA solution that's coming, right? People will eventually move out of Ethereum anyway to use the other DA solution. But then the downside of that is that, well, you're not settled on Ethereum anymore, and then you're posting DA something else, then the security is worse, right? And then as someone that's working on Ethereum space, I would hate for them to take our lunch, basically, right? So that's something that we have to do something, right? And whether how to do it, like what to do it, like when to do it, that's another question.
Wow. Ethereum competing also as a DA layer. That's another really big topic that, I don't think we have time to get into, but it is a point that everyone should take note of, and perhaps we should do another panel on. Okay, let's also talk about testing for Dencun a little bit, because I gotta say, Terence, Prism was in the hot seat. The Prism team, the client team, was in the hot seat for many of these calls. So many client teams on the execution layer and consensus layer were pushing, let's get these test nets up, let's move forward with scheduling the testnet upgrade for Dencun on a certain date. And you were one of the voices, sometimes the only voice, asking for more time, more testing, more review. Let's see how the MEV boost infrastructure is working. And I think in many instances, there were periods where other client teams were kind of suggesting that your team, the Prism team, was the reason that the upgrade was being delayed. Were you feeling very pressured about trying to get all of the code changes that are required for Dencun in a timely manner? Are you concerned at all about the testing process having been too rushed, given just like the amount of how the Prism team was a little bit in the minority this time around for testing timeline and opinions around the testing timeline?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a great question. So I think Prism team was actually the first team, along with Lighthouse, that had this waiver for interrupt to start with, right? And then between them, we have found like many issues with the spec within the code itself, and then we kind of iterate on those issues, right? And the question was just like, I think this is just expectation, right? Just say we have been on mainnet since Beacon Chain launch for about 4 years now. So would you argue the Beacon Chain launch was rushed, or would you argue the Beacon Chain launch was right on time, right? And to be fair, when the Beacon Chain launch, we probably have like 90% confidence that this is gonna work, but we have to ship something, right? So we had 90% confidence. Then at the merge, we probably had 95% confidence that it wasn't gonna work, but then it went really well, right? But then as the protocol ossify, as the client code ossify, I argue that it becomes very hard to make changes, and that is for the good thing, right? Like today, would you ride an airplane if someone tells you it works 99.9% of the time? Probably not, right? You want something that's perfect, as close to perfect as possible. So we kind of had this mindset we kind of had this mindset baked in our brain as we get towards the mainnet that like we're still finding bugs. The relayer is not ready, and then the MEV boost is not ready, and 2 weeks test time is not enough. And typically we do way longer test net time, but this time we only do 2 weeks per test net. To us, that was very rushed, right? I guess it's just managing expectation. If today you say, okay, well, if we're okay with 90% ready, then let's ship it. Then sure, we're fine. But we're kind of striving for that 99.99% like perfection.
Yeah, we used to move fast and break things. I think before the Beacon Chain launch, you can look at some of our early testnets kind of crash and burn. And now being in a position where we're one of the two most popular clients, we can't afford to mess it up. And our testing internally, we're really, really looking for the bugs and making sure they're ironed out. Because when Prism has an issue, Ethereum will have an issue, and we're really just making sure that's not going to happen.
I 100% agree with this logic, but it doesn't seem like the logic that other client teams are adopting. Like Prism might have a 95%, are we 95% sure, but it seems like perhaps other client teams have a little bit of a lower bar. And I'm curious to know, like, as the complexity of Ethereum grows, why is it that there seems to be increased pressure to get upgrades out faster? If we're talking about Dencun, the timeline for Dencun, especially the last 3 testnets, there was even talk about, instead of having the last 3 public testnets 2 weeks apart, just like shortening it to 1. The next upgrade, Electra, there's a ton of pressure to get it done before the end of the year. If Ethereum is getting bulkier, more complex, difficult to test, why is it that the testing process, and it seems as though the general kind of feel is to do more upgrades faster, like basically start changing Ethereum, like move fast and break things.
Yeah, I'll start with that. If we were more of a minority client, we could probably YOLO a little bit more. Like, because if 5% of the network goes offline, well, things are not going to be too impacted. And to the point about people expecting things to move a little faster, I mean, we've been hearing this for a while. Like, when merged, like that was a meme for a long time. Like we almost got a little bit like, come on, give us a break. We're going as fast as we can here. We're only human. And yeah, you have a great point about complexity, right? Like now we have 2 layers we have to manage, and there are a lot of clients, and there's a lot of different combination of things that could happen. And there are a lot of sophisticated ideas about like attacking P2P. So we just really, really want it to be robust, and liveness is really important. I just say, I feel like in these instances, it's better to take a little bit more time because, when you look back, like no one's complaining that the merge took too long. We're all like, what about the merge? It's old news, So let's just have a little bit more confidence, as close as 100% we can be. Like every time we do a release, we say, do we have the highest confidence we can have on this? And if not, let's take a little bit more time to look at the data, a little bit more time to analyze, to soak this, to try to break it so we can catch the bug before it's out there and actually impacting users.
I can talk more on the research angle, right? I think this is like a feature and a bug because like social coordination is very expensive on the Ethereum level, right? It's like we like to argue a lot about nothing typically.
No, we don't.
But like between the researchers, the implementers, and different and just in different forums, right? But then we can also speed things up. It's very easy. We can say, okay, this is a topic we made decision just 1 week from now, right? And that's it, right? But that kind of just becomes like a company, right? And one of Ethereum's strength is this decentralization governance, is this raw governance. But the downside of that is it takes a very long time, right? Versus like you go to another approach, which is more top-down, like company style, we can make decisions much faster, right? So it's kind of the trade-off here. And then Ethereum kind of prefer the later approach.
Okay, very quickly, because I have another big question related to this. But very quickly, percentage-wise, right now, how confident are you that Dencun is going to go off without a hitch? There's not going to be any problems and issues. March 13th.
Okay, that's a tough one. I would say we feel really, really good. As close to 100% as we can be. I mean, we've had a lot of testing and even making changes as much as a couple weeks ago to just say, you know what, if we do this, we may not need it, but just having it's going to be a little bit better. So I'm feeling really, really confident. If it was tomorrow, I would be sleeping tonight very well. I'd be excited. I'm not nervous at all. Very similar to the merge. Terence said 99.9%, I think. And I feel really good about this next upgrade. I'm just excited for it to happen. I feel good about it.
So there are also a lot of dependency, right? We can be 100%, but Ethereum right now, if you look at the stack, there's multiple layers, right? There's CL client, there's EL client, there's MEV boost, there's relayer, there's builder, there's searcher, there's blah, 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 right? Then today, if one of the relayer doesn't work, then we're kind of screwed. If today one of the builder doesn't work, we're also kind of screwed, right? So you kind of have this dependency as well, which is kind of beautiful, I guess. But then again, there are a lot of surface for risk, and we're trying to reduce the surface.
That's fair. There are an increasing number of dependencies since the merge for all these other softwares and protocols that need to be upgraded as you upgrade your execution layer client, and that does introduce more risks. Okay. Okay, so one final big question. Unfortunately, we're not going to get time to talk about Electra like I thought, but we'll have another panel for that another time. Big question about the future roadmap of Ethereum. So the merge was supposed to be the last phase of development. And now with Protodanksharding, I don't know if you guys know this, but Protodanksharding is proto. It is like one stepping stone to full danksharding. So there's more upgrades that need to happen to even get the full vision of what we're talking about to reduce fees for L2s. And aside from that, there's just a ton of other development items, Verkle, MaxEB, inclusion list, Enshrine PBS. It seems like a never-ending list of upgrades that need to happen on Ethereum. And I'm wondering if this worries you. I'm wondering if you guys think that this constant pattern of more upgrades is actually a major centralization risk for Ethereum. The fact that Ethereum can upgrade so easily, so quickly, node operators don't ever kind of hard fork away from Ethereum and the release that the client teams are putting out. This seems like a norm and a vision for Ethereum that's not going to be changing anytime soon. How concerned are you guys about the increasing complexity that comes with all these upgrades, the increasing centralization and resources that comes with having to upgrade like twice every year?
My short answer is software is never finished. And Ethereum core protocol, for example, will be continually making, even if you said it's feature complete and we're not adding more features, there's still maintenance stuff to do. And this year in Electra, like the Prism team's point of view on scoping it is, let's pay some of this tech debt down and kind of simplify things, and then we'll go back to the more complex ideas in the following fork. Terence, what do you think?
I'm not concerned at all. I mean, Ethereum works as of today, right? If everyone goes away, Ethereum will keep working. We have great client diversity. We set up a really good foundation, right? Right now, we just keep adding features on top that we wouldn't have, right? And then I think we have accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, which was the merge, and now we have some sort of data sharding, right? And we can just keep building on top. But yes, there's a lot to do, but I don't feel like we're pressured to do this like tomorrow, basically.
And so you guys aren't worried that one of these upgrades is going to break Ethereum?
Go ahead.
No, because there's client diversity. That's the only reason I don't worry about it. There's enough like people at different geographic location. There's different software stack and stuff like that. If one of the bug goes down, unless it's like a really crazy spec bug that's open source, which everyone can view, then like most of the clients will still survive.
Yeah, same answer for me. It would have to be something fundamentally wrong with the specification, not really in a particular client because of the client diversity model, the multi-client model.
Right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for chatting with me about the Dencun upgrade. I hope this was helpful for people in the audience too. If you're a node operator, please update your nodes before March 13th. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so good news. We still have some time, so we can dig a little bit more and and jump on other topics. I think your mic is off, but it will be on.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, the timer.
back.
I thought we were going overtime, but I guess we have more time. So maybe we do actually have time to talk about Electra a little bit. So okay,
Yes.
maybe we should talk about Electra. Let's talk about Electra, because we talked about Dencun, no, please don't go. um, let's talk about Electra, because we just talked about Dencun. One of the most controversial things that have been brought up for Electra is obviously reducing staking rewards. Would you agree, or would you say that there's other more controversial things?
That one is, I feel, very controversial. I don't know if it's the most controversial, but when you're looking at that, reducing the validator rewards, right? What is the problem we're trying to solve? It's this growth of validators, right? We're trying to say, let's disincentivize it a little bit to maintain this growth. I think the controversial part is that this won't fix it at all. I mean, it might help a little bit, but you're still going to have the same problems because you still have other incentives. You have block fees, rewards, restaking, these other kind of things. I would even go to say that if you set block reward or validator rewards to near zero, you're still going to have growth, almost at least a little bit. Maybe not on like the institutional side. People are not going to be very interested in 0% or 1% APY. But like at home staker, when I saw that, I was like, whatever, I'm still going to stake. Like, and if I get more ETH, I'm going to put more in there. There's still yield. I'm still going to do it.
This is true.
Is this about the insurance curve?
Yeah, this is about the reducing.
Oh man, this is okay. So I agree. I think we cannot live in a world where 100% ETH is stake. I think everyone agrees with that. I think 25 right now the insurance curve is target 25%. My opinion is that's probably too low. I think there is a middle ground that where everyone's happy. I don't know what the number is. Maybe it's 50% or something like that. But I do agree that like we need to do something. Okay. So this is my only worry is that say today we ship something at 2024 and we don't touch the insurance curve. Okay. And then the next hard fork say delayed like always. It's supposed to be 2025, but we delay until 2026. And that's basically 2 years of doing nothing, right? And at that point, the worst case scenario, we could be looking at 60% of each stake, right? And that's gonna be painful to fix between when you look at 60% each stake, and then you have to kind of like make people add it down to 50%, or you're happy with 60%. So it's kind of weird timing, but I do think 25% is probably a little bit too aggressive.
Okay, but question about that. Why is it that the staking rate being high, like say 100%, is bad if the staking is not done through like if you had enshrined liquid staking or if you had enshrined, I don't know, restaking?
Yeah, but
isn't the reason why like a high staking rate, isn't the reason why it's bad is because most of that staking is happening through like a smart contract. So the smart contract risk is bad, but if you were to address the smart contract risk, would a high staking rate be fine?
I think that's probably fine as long as it doesn't go through like STETH or RETH because now your majority of it is controlled through Lido governance, right? But then if today you have some enshrined staking, which I haven't really heard like a really good proposal out there, I think that would take much, much, much longer to enshrine like your staking onto Ethereum. But maybe, yes, but like you said, maybe that's okay.
Yeah, it just seems impossible to me to stop innovation on the smart contract level without thinking of a way to enshrine these procedures, these like abilities. But you're right, it is a very complex upgrade. But speaking to addressing the growth of the validator set, another very important code change is maximum effective balance. Why in the world is that not a higher priority for Electra? I'm confused because I thought that could literally break like the networking layer of Ethereum. And the kind of band-aid solution we have in Dencun, reminder, on Dencun, we've got a max churn limit of 8, so woohoo for that. But apparently, that's not going to stop the growth really all that much, especially if that maximum churn limit keeps getting hit. So why is not max EB the top of the list for Electra?
From the client developer perspective, MaxEB is one of the more invasive changes in client implementation. It has a lot of complexity. We can do it in Electra. The argument we're making is if you want to ship something this year, we're not going to do max EB. And we're suggesting, as I said earlier, let's simplify things and pay some of this tech debt and then start bringing in the complex changes, because it's hard to do both at the same time. And it's also hard to ship and upgrade with a lot of different changes, because there are a lot of things to test, and there could be gaps perhaps. It's just harder to deal with. I do think max EB is a really great idea. I think that's something that people have been wanting for a while, right? Like this concept that you deposit 32 ETH and you're earning yield, but you're only earning yield on the original principal and not the yield that you've made. That's just driven more and more adoption towards liquid staking, where people are like, well, if I just put that in there, it's just compounding over and over again. And for the average user, they don't have many multiples of 32 ETH, so that's an avenue they've taken. But I think it just boils down to complexity and shipping on time, because I can imagine we say, yeah, let's do it, and then we're hearing, when's Electra going to ship? Stop delaying it. Let's go. But if it's really complex, it's going to be hard to do that.
I think the problem today is that, okay, so before, say today, the merge, there is a headline. Then withdraw, there is a headline, and there's Protodanksharding EIP 4844 was the headline, right? But if you look at Electra or Petra, like what is the headline? This is the first time in the Ethereum history where we have a hard fork, but we don't have a headline, right? But because we don't have a headline, then people start like wondering what feature do we ship or what timeline do we base on, right? So now we have to ask our question: do we determine the future based on the timeline, or do we determine the timeline based on the future, right? And really, no one has answered that today. I think that's the first thing we need to decide as a community, right? And then from our end, we have always promoted that we want the timeline to be fixed, that's 2024, and based on the timeline, we decide the future. But then, like, say if today we agree the timeline is on 2025, then yes, we can ship max EB. We're very happy with max EB, but we just don't have a timeline in mind.
Okay, that's a very good point. But already developers seem to be thinking that the headline feature for Electra is inclusion lists. It seems as though inclusion lists are the big feature that's going to be going into the next upgrade. And I'm a little bit confused because I don't even think inclusion lists are going to be that helpful for censorship resistance on Ethereum, which we can get into. But I personally am not confident that Electra is going to happen before the end of the year. And so I'm wondering if your team is again in the minority about pushing for a timeline and a type of upgrade that is focused on reducing technical debt, but decisions are being made on these calls, on these ACD calls, where we're including upgrades like inclusion lists that are complex and are not necessarily reducing technical debt, but increasing complexity. I mean, what are your thoughts, Terence?
Yeah, so I think the whole idea with this timeline is that we really wanted to ship Vertical. So Vertical was supposed to be this next big thing, right? And then the question is, okay, Vertical will be delayed for 2025. That is Osaka, right? Now, do we do something in the middle or not? So if we want to do something in the middle, then that middle something has to be small enough such that it has to be the midpoint between now and then Osaka, right? Because if we make it too close to Osaka, then Osaka will be delayed, and then the Vertical will be delayed. So we're pushing Vertical apart. So that was kind of like basically how everything was decided. But then again, like, I'm just the only person speaking, I'm just speaking, there's so many opinions out there. Like, at the end of the day, it's gonna be like community decision, and I do hope we'll reach to the decision very soon.
Anything to add there, Preston?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay, the other thing about Electra, but also broadly about the way that these upgrades, and especially the Dencun upgrade, other parts of it. A big feature that we're talking about, that developers talked about on today's developer call, was account abstraction. And basically code changes that are going to impact the end user and also dApp developers. So in Dencun, actually, there's a couple of upgrades that are going to improve, the smart contract developer experience, like transient storage that has been championed for several years, the deprecation of self-destruct. These are always minor code changes that are a little bit hard to get into upgrades and kind of tacked on. Have you guys thought a little bit about prioritizing like the smart contract developer experience for certain upgrades? Like I've always seen the main feature being the merge, like 4844. And it seems as though as Ethereum focuses more on being a DA layer, these code changes that are focused on making Ethereum a good execution layer are starting to really, the wind in their sails is lessening. And I worry that things like EOF, improving the solidity language, improving the EVM, all of these code changes that are more focused on users, on the developers on Ethereum, they're not going to headline an upgrade. Is that concerning to you, or do you guys want developers to leave Ethereum? Is that really the goal here? I mean,
Definitely don't want developers to leave Ethereum, and I hear you on some of these pain points here. In my personal opinion, some of the things you listed are on the tech debt side of things, like state expiry and deprecating self-destruct. I think we should, really be focusing on these things, but it's also hard because we have a lot of like alt L1s that are like, oh, we're going to ship the feature faster, and they have the advantage of not having this tech debt with them. So it's kind of this like balance of how do we move fast and have new features and stay competitive, but also like take care of the mess that we're leaving behind from like maybe just poor design or things that are no longer relevant anymore.
So I think a caveat is Preston and I are mostly on consensus layer, so we cannot speak so much on the execution side. But from the consensus side, we actually have been trying to make the developer easier. For example, we are exposing the beacon root onto the EVM that helps EigenLayer with the restaking, helps Rocket Pool. And then for the Electra, we also have this execution layer trigger withdrawal that also helps EigenLayer and staking pool. So we're trying to make the dApps easier, but there's not much we can do because we mostly focus on the consensus layer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in the upgrade, there's competing visions of what Ethereum should be. Like there's certain upgrades, certain code changes that will really help keep the developer dApp ecosystem on Ethereum strong, and others that will push, encourage users and dApps to move to other protocols like the L2s. But, Ethereum's trying to do both, compete on both, maintain both, improve on some. And I can see why there's lots of competing priorities. Okay, in the last couple seconds that we have, assuming that Electra happens in 2025, not saying that it will, but just potentially if it happens in 2025, what is like the main code change that you would like to see in Electra?
Well, if we're confident that it's not happening this year, it'll happen in 2025, and that we're happy with it happening anytime in the year, I think we can open up the scope a little bit and reconsider, at least from our point of view. You said we're kind of in the minority of saying let's keep it small, but if it's not going to be in the midterm before Osaka, then let's go ahead and do these things like max EB inclusion list. EPBS is really exciting as well. I know that Terence has a lot input on that.
All of them?
Well, if we're talking about, we have nearly 2 years from today, or say conservatively like 18 months. I think that's a little bit easier to try to get more stuff and reevaluate the scope. I think that the scope that we initially said was as small as possible, right? Keep the things in there so we could ship something this year like November, December. But if we're saying, well, let's do November, December of the following year, then that's an entire another year of development. So I would say that we could try to get those things in there because they are all nice features and we do want them. But as Terence said, it's like a little bit of a timing thing. Like, do you want it all or do you want it now? Like, you can't have both.
Do you have one, Terence, or are you also similarly thinking like, if it's not going to happen in 2024, then why not just do it like all of them and delay Verkle even further?
Yeah, I mean, this is also like has to do with the EL side planning with the Verkle planning, right? I mean, ideally, yes, if we do everything in 2025, we can squeeze in a lot more things because when you have 2 hard forks, it usually means longer time than just 1 hard fork because you have to upgrade 3 test nets and the mainnet, right? And then there's about 2-3 weeks between each test net. So those time are kind of just idle. I guess it's not idle, but you can focus on other things. But yes, it is. I guess you can squeeze in a lot more features with just 1 hard fork.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for sticking around for the second half of this talk on Electra. We hope that was helpful, and thank you guys for sticking around. And thank you, Terence and Preston, for the insight on the next Ethereum, the next Ethereum upgrade.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, let's hear it for our great panelists. Thank you, Christine.